Good morning.
Good morning.
It's Friday, November 15th, 1922. 2019. I want to ask you all to please turn off your cell phones or place them on silent, and make sure that they are in a place that we don't get feedback. You may notice board members accessing their laptops and their devices. They're using the laptops solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comment on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Depending on the number of people who wish to testify on a particular agenda item, a time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic, and if a time limit is determined to be necessary, keep your comments to within that time. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and before we take the roll, I want to make an introduction. I want to introduce Dr. Kevin Keating, who is the new dean of the School of the North State University School of Dentistry. And I know that you got quite a schedule this morning, so I wanted to be sure to make that introduction before you're on your way to the House of Delegates, is right? We're very excited. I'm very excited about something in Northern California. So with that, I'd like to ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the season finale of the Dental Board of California, 2019. Burton.
Here.
Burton here. Chan here. Chappelle Ingram. Here. Chappelle Ingram here. Lai. Lai here. Larren. Larren here. Lay. Lay here. Mackenzie. Mackenzie here. Medina. Medina here. Morrow. Morrow here. Loggy. Loggy here. Pacheco. Pacheco here. Stuart. Stuart here. Witcher. Witcher here. You here. All accounted and are present for. Yeah.
Thank you. So the first item is item 15, the Executive Officer's Report.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. My report today is going to be the shortest report I have ever given as your Executive Officer. I'd like to see a little more cheering about that, because we're going to have a long day. I want to start off by recognizing that there were a number of board members that nominated me for the honorary fellowship in the American College of Dentistry. And I went through that process essentially on September 5th. At the time, I had an opportunity to actually speak and thank everybody, and I didn't take that opportunity. It was also happened to coincide with the 2-year anniversary of the passing of my husband. So it was a very emotional time for me. But I had to say something today because while it is certainly an honor and humbling to be an honorary fellow of that wonderful organization, the American College, and I do appreciate that, what was most heartwarming was that my board members essentially nominated me for that position. The 2 sponsors were Dr. Tom Stuart and Dr. Steve Morrow, and of course our lovely Dr. Chan was up there saying wonderful things about me. So I want you all to know that I do appreciate the nomination. I appreciate being part of the group, but I most appreciate that you're part of my family. So thank you all individually for that nomination. It is quite an honor. Moving on, most of the time spent since our last meeting in August was surprisingly on our Sunset Review. This was an unusual year for us. Typically, our Sunset Review legislation is decided upon in August, and of course this year session went longer than usual, and our bill went to the very last minute. I mean, I was over there waiting for it to come off the Assembly floor at the last minute, and I'm sorry, the Senate floor, and go back and forth for concurrence. And then the governor waited until the last day to sign it too, so a huge sigh of relief. And also congratulations to our board. This is the third Sunset Review that I've been through, and it was very streamlined, and it was our legislative package was really full of things that the board had talked about during the last 4 years, and had I think we were very lucky to have received the attention that we got from Assemblymember Lowe and his staff in putting forth statutory changes that will really help us continue to do our business efficiently and effectively. That being said, I want to remind you that our next board meeting will be in 2020, and it's going to be at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in San Diego on February 27th and 28th. We'll be sending out notices as a reminder. And at this point now, I just want to recognize part of our family members who are going to be leaving us today. And so I'm going to ask that they individually come up as we just give them a little going away recognition. For Chevette, isn't that? I've never done that before. Chevette, I kind of like that. I wish I'd thought of that earlier. Yvette Chappelle Ingram, that's where we get Chevette. We're giving her a certificate of appreciation. It's from the Dental Board in recognition of your dedication, commitment, and invaluable leadership in the protection of consumers of dental services in California, and for your active participation serving as board secretary in 2018 and as a member of various board committees. Thank you for your service.
That was coming. Thank you.
I think we're doing this in alphabetical order, so we know who's next. Dr. Lay, come on up. So Dr. Lay, in recognition of your dedication, commitment, and invaluable leadership in the protection of consumers of dental services in California, and for your active participation serving as board vice president in 2012, board president in 2013, and a member of various boards and committees. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you, Chair. Oh, you're welcome. Dr. Bruce Witcher. Again, in recognition of your dedication, commitment, and valuable leadership in the protection of consumers of dental services in California, and for your active participation serving as board vice president in 2010, 2011, 2014, 2015, and president in 2012 and 2017. Board members, this is an example of what you want to be doing in your service to the board, and as an active member of various board committees. Thank you for your service, Dr. Witcher.
Strategic planning.
Thank you so much.
At this point, I also wanted to, typically at the end of the year when we have an outgoing president, the board gives the outgoing president a plaque. And so if President Burton would please stand. in grateful appreciation for your outstanding leadership through the board's successful sunset review process. Now, Fran already got a plaque the last time she was president for 2 years in a row, so this is her third plaque moving forward. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all board members and myself. Done a fabulous job.
Thank you.
That concludes my executive officer report.
Before we move on, our retiring members, I wanted to give any of you an opportunity if there's something you want to say publicly. And you don't have to. But you need to be at a mic, so you want to.
This on with me right now. I would like to say that it's been more than a privilege. It's been more than a privilege to serve on this board. And as I said last night, and when we were at dinner, that I brag oftentimes about this board, and it's so well run by the staff and the people here. But even more. And you mentioned this Karen, and I was getting ready to call you Sharon. You mentioned
Chevette and Sharon.
I know. You see, we can go on the road, but it's because it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure most of all by the family, the feeling of family on this board, and it's more or less 50% work, but also the fact that I know that people here are rooting everyone on, and you can't have, that feeling doesn't come. I know a lot about a lot of other commissions. I brag about this commission, but oftentimes what'll happen is that people will say, I wish that I were on a commission like yours, and so I will, we're joined at the hip, Karen, we're joined at the hip. And I just want to say I'll miss you, and it's been a pleasure serving with all of you. Thank you for keeping me in line.
I wasn't planning on saying anything because you know me, I'm very quiet. No, it's been a great ride, and I've learned a lot. And there's so many challenges in our state, and I'm very proud of what this board has accomplished, and I know that you will accomplish even much more after I leave the board. And as I was sharing with most of you, that is one thing that I have learned in the last 11 years is patience. I have become a much more patient person than I was when I joined the board. Things move very slowly, but surely. And I think that you guys are a great group. Thank you so much for being there. I want to thank the staff for all the things that they have done. So many things that that the staff does that we don't know. They do all of the hard work behind the scenes, and we have no idea. By the time that it comes to the board, it's pretty much done. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff for everything that they've done. And with that, good luck. In the future years. Thank you.
Well, I made a few comments last night, but saved a few for today. I'll try to be brief here, but I would just like to echo the sentiments of both my classmate and Dr. Lay, and of course Yvette. Just to say that everybody here brings something to the table. I've learned something from every one of you. And that's been a great experience. The other thing is, we've always been able to get along pretty well, despite having differing views on things. It's never really become contentious among the board members. So that's a sign of a really solid functioning board. And this board was not always like this. So it's nice to know, and I certainly hope that can continue on into the future. A few highlights of my career, coming onto the board with Dr. Lay and Fran as classmates. Little did I know all the things we would go through together over those years. Although I've been singled out for being an advocate of strategic planning, I think Fran takes the cake as the queen of Sunset Review, having done all three. And I'll never forget the comment she first made when we read over a draft of our first Sunset, the first one in 10 years, mind you. This was way back in the beginning. She said, if I were a legislature and I got this, I'd sunset this board. We got some work to do. So, the other high point was serving on the selection committee for the executive officer a couple of times with Fran the last time. And of course, we were very fortunate to have one of our candidates being Karen. And it was not a hard choice. So anyway, that was a signal moment for me. So I told my staff at my office, don't give me a retirement party. I'm not retiring. I may not be on the DS anymore, but I plan on I intend to remain active in the profession. And of course, I've made, I would be remiss if I didn't thank staff for all that they've done. I mean, there's staff members here, Sarah and Jessica Olney and others who I've worked with for many years, and without them, we'd just be lost. They're the core, they're the institutional memory, they're the history, and it's just so great to have them to work with. Like Dr. Lay was saying, we come with a board packet, things laid out. It makes our job a lot easier and much more efficient. But anyway, I would really like to thank you to you all, and I'm sure you'll be seeing me around again, but not here, but in some capacity. So thank you.
Okay, our next item is 16A, update on portfolio license pathway to licensure.
Good morning, Dental Board. Good to see a lot of you again. If
Daniel,
you don't remember,
you need to pull your mic a little closer. Put on your outside voice. By the way, you look
I'm going to talk a little louder.
You look very nice today.
Oh, thank you. So do you all.
Just so you know, the staff doesn't dress like this on a regular basis. They dress up for the board, which is lovely.
Only special occasions.
Special occasions.
So I'll introduce myself again. My name is Daniel Yoon, licensing analyst with the Dental Board of California. And I'm here this morning to give a report on agenda item 16A, update on the portfolio pathway to licensure. So as you saw at the last board meeting, we had 4 applications for dental licensing through the pathway, portfolio pathway. All 4 have been issued a license, so they are all good to go now. But because you see the low number, we have decided to promote the portfolio pathway to licensure using these informational workshops at each dental school to help encourage, inform, and promote the portfolio pathway to licensure. So we did our first 2 earlier in the spring of 2019, and we had positive feedback from both the students and the faculty there, so we decided to continue on and try to really stimulate the interest in the portfolio pathway with the students. So in the report that you have in front of you, we did 3 visits to different dental schools in the Southern California and Northern California area in October of 2019. Again, this is to encourage first year, second year, and really any interested dental students to really think about and make the portfolio pathway an option once they continue on their dental education at the dental schools. So just to give you a brief rundown of what we did, at every presentation we start off by asking 2 questions. The first question is, are any of you or do you have any plans of staying in the state of California to practice dentistry. And when we asked this question, the majority of the students raised their hand. More than 3/4, 90%, around there, they'll raise their hand. So they have an idea or an interest in staying in California. But then we ask a second question, have any of you ever heard about the portfolio pathway to licensure, or have any information regarding that? And when we asked this question, we found only a small handful raised their hand. So the idea that we're going around and promoting this and informing them, I think is a really good thing that we're doing right now. So after we ask these questions, we have a little brief PowerPoint presentation that gives us a rundown of what the portfolio pathway to licensure is, what's involved, what the requirements are, and what is to be expected. Then we also have a portfolio contact at the dental school that will prepare a brief idea of how the portfolio process is run at the dental school. And after that, something new we tried to incorporate this time was invite portfolio licensed dentists in the past to come and share their experiences and their unique perspective on the portfolio pathway to licensure. And so this time around in the Southern California area, when we went to Loma Linda and we went to the University of Southern California, we invited Dr. Stephanie Saeed to come with us. She was a graduate through the portfolio pathway in Loma Linda back in 2018. And she was more than willing to come and help us out. So she was able to share her unique experiences about the portfolio. And what was nice about Dr. Saeed was that she also took a clinical exam, such as the REB examination. So she was able to give a unique perspective of both licensing pathways and then offer her experiences to the dental students, which I believe the students really appreciated. After we concluded, we have the portfolio brochures that we prepared, so if there's any interested students, we would give those brochures out. Also in a week later or so in Northern California, went to the University of the Pacific, and then we invited Dr. Moed Khan to come with us to talk about his experience down the portfolio pathway. He was actually a graduate from UOP in 2017, so he had a very unique experience of knowing what the portfolio process was at that specific dental school. So he was able to relate and give a lot of good tips and suggestions to the dental students for those who may be interested in going down the portfolio pathway. We also want to thank the dental schools as they did a lot of lunch and learn to invite a lot of the students to come to visit, so we thank them for spending their resources on us for that. But overall, we got a lot of good positive reaction and feedback based off of this informational workshops. The students appreciated it because now they can go ahead and plan ahead if they decided to go down the portfolio pathway. The dental schools appreciated in that now they can identify the students who may be interested in the portfolio pathway to licensure, so they can spend their resources and really help them go along the process throughout their dental school career. So we plan on continuing to offer these informational workshops, hopefully to the rest of the dental schools here in California. We're also scheduling feedback, or not scheduling, we're scheduling a revisit to those dental schools that we've already gone to. We already plan on going back in the spring for 2 of the dental schools that we've already visited. So hopefully with this workshop that we're doing, we continue to stimulate interest, continue to inform, continue to encourage the students that the portfolio is a good route for them and a good way to obtain a license, especially in California. So with that, that will conclude my report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Dr. Lodge?
Hi, Daniel. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Dr.
You're
Lodge.
smiling this time. I'm happy. My question is, with the advent of prosthetic being added to our requirement for licensure, do you expect more of a following in portfolio? Do you perceive that, being that there's an addition, this is a portfolio will then be kind of all-inclusive and easier for them to receive a license in the state?
So when we did these informational workshops, we heard rumors that prosthetics will be included in a clinical examination. So we didn't really highlight that point when we were talking to those students regarding it. However, that's definitely a point that we can definitely incorporate into our future workshops.
Thank you. Daniel, I want to just tell you how much I appreciate it, and I appreciate the board's effort in meeting with the students in the schools in California and promoting the opportunity of licensure through the portfolio pathway. Going back a number of years when the board decided to go down this pathway and develop this type of an examination, Dr. Casagrande, at that time a member of the board, was very instrumental in this process. And it was a process that was obviously developed with cooperation of all of the dental schools and with CDA. At the recent American Association of Dental Boards meetings in Nevada, a number of members of various dental boards around the country talked to me about the portfolio process. And one of the things that I realized from them is that the absence of an outside third party doing the assessment was of concern. However, that same process is approved by the Commission on Dental Accreditation for establishing competency for graduation. But I think a lot of that is a lack of the dental boards around the country aware of the process. And so I think that it might be beneficial for us to spend some time and some effort in educating, let's say, the various dental boards around the country as to what the portfolio process is, how it's conducted, and the whole sort of open the windows a little bit so that they have a better understanding of what it is. They have a misconception of the process, and I think it would help portability or more widely accepted portfolio examination for licensure in states other than California and those that do accept it now. I believe our last tally was somewhere around 12 to 14 states that have accepted the portfolio process for licensure. Have you done a recent survey of states to find out how many accept it?
So for a portfolio licensed dentist who wants to move to another state to obtain their license, we counted around 16 or somewhere around there, but we'll do another reassessment to see if some of the laws have changed. But those who want to apply to another state with a portfolio license, they need to meet, of course, their criteria. But we found out from the initial application, they can't get a license. They have to get a license in California first through the portfolio. But then afterwards, if they want to get a license in another state, we counted around 16 or so. But we'll do another check on that.
Any public comment? Well, thank you very much, Daniel. Next is item 16B, Western Regional Examination Board report.
So Dr. Rossline and I attended the Dental Examination Review Board at RAP a week ago, November 8th in Denver, Colorado. So I would just give a brief, a report, and then I'll have Dr. Lai continue. So basically, at the meeting, we were provided with the psychometric analysis of the RAP exam, for 2019. We also received the reports from the different committees, endo, perio, and also operative. we received the data on the examinations, and there were almost 2,100 dental applications, dental candidates who took the exam. The passing rate for 4 items, actually 5, was pretty high. It was in the high 90s. So for the CTP, which is the written exam, it was 98.6% passing. For the operative, it was close to that number as well. For perio, that was the highest one. It was at 98%. And for the pros, that was slightly lower. And for endo, it was 90% pass. So the rep executive director also sent a survey to all the member states that I forwarded to Karen. The rep wanted to know, whether or not there will be any future changes in the state board requirements. So at the meeting, there were executive directors from 5 different states that also attended the meeting. So they also gave some updates, on the activities of the dental board. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Ross Lai, who will provide you additional information.
Thank you. It was fun. Is it possible if I can have Dr. Magnuson come up just in case there's questions after my report? I really didn't know what DERB was, and I know what REB was, but I understand now better of how this whole process with REB works. They're a group of member states. I don't know if, so I kind of jotted it all down. So we had representatives from either a board from Arizona, New Mexico, Alaska, Washington, Missouri, Texas, Oregon, Arkansas, Iowa, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Illinois, and Montana. And of course, the 2 illustrious doctors from California. I think I have a better understanding of how the process is, the process for examination for new grads. They went, what was presented to me was a number of people taking the exam. So in the DDS category was 2,298 tests, and combined with hygiene and retakes, 5,400 tests. So of the dental hygienists and the retakes, you're looking at 3,000 exams given by REB. REB had a specialist in psychometrics give us a talk about how the test is given, the monitoring systems, explain discussion of training, calibration, exam teams, and analysis. And we discussed this among all the board members, board members that are board members, basically. And how consistent the results are, how they're not there to weed people out, they're trying to help people into our profession. Okay, and that's why they constantly redesign it for retakes and allowing them to have basically an easier way to this, knowing that it's very difficult. So even with, I didn't know how they did the endo part of the exam, and they have, and it isn't a natural tooth, they use a 3D printed tooth, which I thought was fascinating. They took a tooth, it could be a tooth from somebody, and they 3D printed it, and so everybody had this, so you had uniformity where everybody had the same tooth, but every tooth on each exam would be different. I thought that was very innovative. Another thing I thought that was very innovative was radiographic pre-provisional acceptance for a class 2. So you can take a radiographic image of a lesion, send it, they can pre-screen it and say, yes, it's available, it's acceptable or not. And that saves and stress for the student, as well as the black bus, as we talked about, where they're selling, where patients are being shuttled there and, oh, I have this lesion. So that eliminates that part of it, which I think is part of why portfolio was done too. Patient-based rather than, oh, this lesion will fit the exam. So I thought that was awesome. And the very fact that with REB, every state's a little different. So I named all these different states. Some take certain aspects, endo, pros, they can add or subtract from this exam and then present it to their regional board or their state board. So that's the criteria is for each state. And being that, I was concerned that the implementation of the prosthetic portion that is required by California in 2020, how that would help or deter people from, taking California board, because that's an addition, and how our school is going to be reacting to that. And so that was a couple of questions that I had. And I think Dr. Manison and Dr. Lay kind of were guiding me along to see how we can utilize their services to the best way for California. We can't speak for anybody else, but for California, I think we need a direct communication with all dental boards, all board exams that we're going to accept. And there's got to be somebody on our board that should be, a proctor or a part of the exam team that goes to different states, because you cannot proctor in your own state. But this allows somebody on our board to have that firsthand information, because I knew nothing of it, and I've been on the board for 7 years. So I think one or a few of us should really think about becoming a REB examiner to bring back information. And I know Dr. Witcher and Dr. Lay have been, and Dr. Dominicis in the past has, I think he was. I don't know if Dr. Casgrani was, but I think that's something we should really think about as a board. And did I leave anything out?
Thank you for having me up here. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Hung Lee for being a representative for REB for so long. She was on DERB while I was on the board and president, and always presented very well. So your state was very well presented at the DERB, and welcome. Hope you have as good a tenure as she did. Very much appreciate it. 2 or 3 things can I do for clarification. First of all, on the endo, every student gets actually the same exact tooth on endo, but when they purchase teeth for practicing, they get a totally different tooth. They don't get the one that we use in the exam. They get one similar. So if their endo's on tooth number 9, they may be able to purchase tooth number 8 to practice on the same thing. But what we wanted is that to be able to standardize it so all the students get the same tooth in a year's period of time. It may change next year so that the second group does not get the same tooth. But they don't get to practice on the tooth before they come to the exam. They can practice on the materials, but they're going to get an independent tooth. Just like in your office, number 9's not the same with every single patient. So that's important. The provisional acceptance, that is done to help the students be prepared for the exam, and they can send in a radiograph that then is approved or not approved by a calibrated examiner. But once they get to the school, they still have to go through a couple more criteria, because just because you have a lesion doesn't necessarily mean that's an acceptable case. So they have to, the floor examiners then can check for contact between the teeth. As you well know, on a radiograph, it can look like there's contact because of overlap, but there's not. Or on a radiograph, it may look like there's an open contact when really there is contact for the restoration. And then the occlusion. There has to be some portion of that tooth in occlusion when the patient bites down. So those 2 processes are then checked on the floor and then approved. So that's normally done well before the beginning of the exam. Once the student comes and gets a floor examiner and gets that approval, then they can prepare their patient. So right at 8 o'clock, not a second before, but right at 8 o'clock they can start their preparation. So that's a big help too for the students. So next year's exam, not many changes in the exam. I think we went through plenty last year, at least for the staff at REB to deal with. One of the things that have happened, and I think I shared with you before, is that many states, since we made this change from if you take one restoration and you pass it, you don't necessarily have to take another, because our psychometric data showed that the second time if last year 11% of the candidates who passed on their first exam, their first prep, 11% decided to take 2 restorations, and all but one passed the second preparation, and the one that did not, the preparation passed, but they had 2 administrative penalties because they asked for modifications that were rejected that dropped their score below the passing rate. So their preparation passed, but they asked for something they shouldn't have been asking for, and consequently that candidate then went to a different exam and passed. So our psychometric data has shown to be truthful. But the nice thing that has happened with this process is state boards, just like yours, has now made a decision on what you want for licensure in your state. You're not requiring us to make that decision. That is your decision. You decide to do prosthodontics, great. If you decide to do perio, great. We'll test for it. The nice thing about this is that states are taking responsibility for their initial licensure, and we totally support that. But one of the things that we're going to change in next year's exams is that during the exam at a school, if the school approves, D3 students can take the prosthodontic section. So they can, which is probably more in tune to their educational process. As a senior, you don't practice on plastic teeth very much. As a junior, you're much closer to that process in your education. So it actually does a little better job, I would think, of testing D3 students. The dean has to approve the student and the school has to approve the process, but they can now take that during their third year, which will free up their day on their senior year. We've also changed the exam so that D4 and D3 students, depending on the school, can do their prosthodontic section on what we call calibration day. At every exam, we calibrate our examiners. No matter when your last exam was, if you did an exam last week and you do an exam this week, you get calibrated as an examiner. But during that day, the students can do their prosthodontic section. We'll then free up their next 2.5 days to do whatever procedures they want for their licensure. And we thought that would help to relieve some of the stress on the students and the time management. And I think, we are also working on an exam for dental therapists. A lot of states are putting those into actions, and I think by next year, since I'm not on the board, I don't know the particulars anymore. You kind of get left behind from that information, but I've been told that next year we're going to have a dental therapist exam for those states that would require that.
So thank you so much for the updated information. So I have a question for the D3 that want to sign up for the lab portion, like the endo and the prostate. If the school approves it, do they pay for just that portion, or do they pay for the entire exam?
No, so first of all, D3s can only do pros, they can't do endo at this point. And at this point, no, the student will not pay. They'll just sign up, they'll take it, they'll pay for the exam process as the D4s do now in the summer or the time before their school gets it. So we're giving that pros section to them at no cost. So well, the idea is that they will pay for it when they take the exam, so.
So for UOP then, PROS will be in D2?
I'm going to presume so. I don't know the particulars, to be honest with you. That's the only school we have is a 3-year school that I know of, and how they've worked that out. I think 24 out of the 28 schools that we do have approved this process. Now, whether that means they're going to implement it next year or not, I don't know, because that is a little change in probably their educational experience at school, and the school also has to have a large enough sim lab to do all of those students. So there's probably some things that have to be worked out, and how that's all going to come about, I don't know, since I wasn't in the line of that information. But I do know that it's going to happen.
What does your PROS exam consist of?
Microphone. Doctor, microphone.
Your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. What does your PROS exam consist of?
It consists of an anterior prep, and then 2 posterior preps in the form of a bridge. So there's a bicuspid and a molar. We have the students make a putty matrix beforehand, and they prep all of their teeth, and there's a list of criteria that they have to be graded on: anterior tooth, posterior tooth, bridge prep. So they can have really nice preps on the bridge, but if they don't have draw, they're penalized for that. So does that answer your question?
Sure. Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning. I applied to be a REB examiner about 2-3 months ago, and I was accepted. I'm really looking forward to that orientation in February.
Thank you.
But when they asked me where I wanted to do the exam, I applied for California schools. Then I found out that we can't do that. Is that correct?
Well, so every state's different. Some states, well, first of all, are you an educator? Okay. Some states don't allow their state board members to practice, to examine in their state. REB doesn't allow educators to practice in the state they teach in. So if you're an instructor at Loma Linda, REB wouldn't want you to go to UOP or USC or something, because you're in that community. I mean, let's make it fair to the students that are doing that. Why you can't go to California would probably be more of your state rules or statutes or something. That wouldn't necessarily be us. I'm from Oregon, and I have tested at the Oregon Dental School, so, but my state doesn't care where I test at.
And I'm going to
So
interrupt
how can I
here.
find
So
out?
breaking news, we just got the word. No, board members of the Dental Board of California should not serve as REB examiners.
Oh, 'cause
You
I
may
had asked.
observe the orientations, but you cannot be REB examiners.
In the
You
state
you
or
cannot
in
see-
general?
In the state or total? Because Dr. Lee would have to drop out then.
I'm thinking it's total. You can't see how the exam is administered. So if the exam is administered across the board, then that would be a conflict of interest according to the Office of Professional Examination Services.
Interesting.
Well, I can tell you, I'm
So-
glad that Dr. Lay's going off for the board then, because she can still be an examiner.
We're gonna take that off the record.
Okay.
So we can have a separate, I can talk to each of you individually, and we can have Michael Knotes work with OPES to determine that.
I do know that there's some states that are like that. As president of REB, I dealt with a couple of states that board members wanted to examine, and their attorney general, that's who told them that they could not because of some conflict of interest. So we have to honor what the states say. So.
Okay, you opened a can of worms then.
Oh, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I wouldn't let that discourage our board members from at least going through the calibration and orientation process. Having done that myself, you learn so much. I mean, it's similar to what Dr. Lai was talking about, except even more so. You really see how a clinical licensing exam works. And even though you don't grade, as I did not, it's well worth doing. And so at least do that.
And you can come and observe. You don't have to be an examiner to come and observe. We encourage any board members from any state to come and observe our process, all the way from the first day of calibration to, most of the time people get a little bored walking around doing nothing but looking, so they are normally there for just one day of examinations. But you get to see how the process works, and just like your board is well run, I think these examination processes are well run too.
Do you have something else? Or is you?
I'll be in touch with you.
So one final thing.
Okay.
So could you arrange where some of the board members can at least observe and give us a timetable, so maybe somebody would want to at least?
Yeah, I can make that happen. We won't want a whole lot of examiners at one exam. That would just kind of, I think, muddle the waters while we're there, and I don't want something to get into the way of the process and the fairness to the students. But yes, we have 6 schools here in the state that we do examine that, so it wouldn't be hard for us to make that happen.
So this isn't just for the doctors, okay? So
you could be a public member.
Public member,
a hygienist.
be really nice.
Yeah, if you're a board member and you want to observe, I think I can make that happen.
I'm sure Ms. Burton would want to be at one of those.
I do have a question.
Sure.
A ballpark, how many exams a year total?
Well, I wasn't at the DERB meeting. Well, I was at the end of the DERB meeting. I had a different meeting to go to for REB, so I didn't get the numbers from last year. But normally it ranges between 22 and 2,400 students a year for dental. And I don't remember what the hygiene was, but it's 1,800 maybe.
I have it where it's the DDS was $22.98, and then dental hygiene and retakes was $3,000.
Yep. So when you get these numbers, there's a lot of psychometric data in there, so you have to understand how many candidates took it, how many exams were taken. So on a retake, for an example, that's going to be considered 2 exams for one candidate. So you have to kind of go through, understand the reports that are giving to exactly how many students are. So with our exam, if you failed the prosthodontics section and you use your time wisely during your exam, we have a retake section on our last day. So you can retake that portion. And if you pass it, then you're good. If you don't pass that, then you've considered to have 2 failures in a year, and the 3rd failure in a year accounts for failure of the whole exam. So we have a pretty good thing. You can do perio, you can do endo, and you can do prost as a retake. You can't retake operative. If you fail operative for whatever reason, there's just not enough time for you to retake it.
So I'll get back. I will research with the Office of Professional Examination Services and with Michael, and I will put out an update to board members regarding how the level of eligibility to participate in any way in REB.
And I would like to know that too, so that I could help. If she wants to be an examiner, I can help her do that. But it would be nice for the board to know if we can't use California board members as examiners, to make sure that we don't do something that would cause problem for the board.
Yeah, we'll straighten that out. I know that board members have not been eligible to be CODA folks because they're required to sign a confidentiality agreement, which state of California board members can't sign. So I don't know if it's similar with REB. Okay. So we'll look into that, and we'll update the board as we find anything out, and we'll be happy to share that information with you too.
Thank you. Is that all? Thank you very much.
Before you go away, is there any public comment? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Item 16C is discussion and possible action regarding implementation of the Adex exam.
Good morning, Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. At the last board meeting in August, the Office of Professional Examination Services had reported on its comprehensive evaluation of the Adex examination and found that the procedures used to establish and support the validity and defensibility of the Adex examination met professional guidelines and technical standards, and the board voted to accept the OPES report. Also at that meeting, the representatives from Adex provided an overview of the examination, referred to as the patient-centered curriculum integrated format, that covered the comprehensive 5 components required now by AB 1519. Adex has also provided a written overview of the dental licensure examination, which is included in the board member meeting materials today. At this point, staff is requesting the board vote to accept the Adex examination in its current format, provided that all outstanding costs for the occupational analysis and the OPES study of the Adex examination for the compliance of the state standards have been paid in full. We're in the process of working with Department of General Services to execute the final components of the contract, and Adex is fully prepared to write that check. They're waiting for it, but we're waiting on DGS at this point, so that's forthcoming. At this point, if the board votes to accept the Adex examination in its current format, staff believes that we can begin working on the BREEZE implementation and acceptance of the Adex examination prior to regulations being promulgated. When the legislation was initially signed, there was question as to the different formats that the Adex examination was offered. Since that time, the formats have changed and it's been condensed into one comprehensive exam, as I understand it, so there is only this one format to accept. Since that's the case, the application process would be similar to what we have for the other regional examination at this time and would simplify the implementation process for board staff. At this point, should the board give direction to accept the examination, we would go back to the office and work with Department of Consumer Affairs OIS to do the BREEZE implementation, which we would expect to be complete by March or so. Pending testing works out correctly, we would then create a courtesy application form, which would mimic our other application forms used for licensure for regional examinations, and then we could promulgate a regulation in the future. But at this point, we don't believe that it would be dependent on the regulation becoming implemented first prior to being able to do it in BREEZE. This is dependent on the board's direction today. We also have Dr. Champagne and Dr. Pappas from Adex available as well to answer any questions.
Dr. Mauro.
I just want to make sure that we understand what is the quote-unquote current format. My understanding, and also from our information in the board packet, that Adex currently has 2 formats, the traditional format and then the patient-centered curriculum integrated format. Which is the format that we are approving?
Staff is requesting that we approve both formats. It's staff's understanding that both formats are the same examination and test the same competencies.
It's also our understanding that dental students would be taking the PCCIF, and that those who are licensed in another state already would be taking the traditional exam. The ones who are taking the traditional exam would likely already qualify for a pathway to licensure in California by LBC.
Yeah, but only if they had practiced for 5 years or more.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Also a clarification on, what is it? 1634. No, I'm sorry, 1632.55 in the code, subsection E. the Adex examination may only be accepted for licensure by a candidate after it is determined that the examination has met the requirements, so forth. In this section, examinations prior to that date may not be used for licensure. So therefore, if an individual has taken the Adex examination 2 years ago, they could not apply for licensure in California through the Adex process. They would also not qualify for licensure by credential because they hadn't practiced for 5 years. Is that correct?
Well, assuming that that's true, that they haven't practiced in 5 years, yes.
Right, okay. Just want to make sure that I'm understanding the implementation of these sections and subsections.
And I just want to remind the board, when we started this process a number of years ago, it was just when Adex had their pilot program, which was the Buffalo model, and they came and made a presentation. It appears that now they've switched over and essentially implemented the Buffalo model or the California portfolio method of examination. That's their primary examination now. So when this legislation was initially passed that said that the board could adopt Adex, we didn't know whether they were going to be moving toward the portfolio type of pathway. And it appears that they have. And so that's why it was essentially, we were discussing having regulations to make it clear that that's the type of format the board would be accepting from any regional testing agency that was going to be using the Adex exam. It appears, and this is up to the board, I mean, it appears that from the presentations we've heard that their primary administration is the PC-CIF method, which is the portfolio type of method. But if board members think that for some reason you would want to make it more clear, we would then have to do that through regulations. It could either be done now, or if you wanted to move forward and through the minutes, essentially give detailed instructions of what we think this is going to be, accept Adex at this point, and if in the future we find out that it's not working or that we're having discipline problems with people who've gone through the Adex, you can always go back and do regulations to make things more clear. So it's not an all or nothing at this point. But I think that in determining whether or not you're going to accept the examination, we probably need to go on the record to say how long staff believes it's going to take to essentially implement this with the breeze testing and the things that need to be done. So even if the board votes today to accept it, I think that we need to build in a time frame in which that's going to occur, perhaps giving 6 months to make sure everything's going to work out. I'm just throwing that out there as an example of what sorts of qualifying information we would attach to the board's decision. Does that answer your question, Dr. Morrow?
Yes, it does. Thank you. At this point in time, I make a motion that we go on record as approving the Adex examination for licensure in California in its current format of the patient-centered curriculum integrated format, and direct staff to write up the necessary regulations and instructions to implement this process.
Okay, is everybody clear on the motion? Is there a second? I'll second it.
I think what Ms. Burton is about to say is now it's open for discussion. And Dr. Lay, did you have your card up first?
Yeah, just
No, actually Bruce did.
Oh, sorry, Bruce.
I'm sorry.
Bruce did.
Bruce, okay.
She's probably thinking the same thing as me, but I heard the word regulation included in the motion. Is this, I heard...
I think what you heard was that that's an option, but that, I don't believe that's the motion that's before us.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Well, I think what he said was the application process will still have to go through the regulatory process, but in the meantime, we're going to be doing courtesy.
Well, can we have a sidebar?
Michael can chiming in. So the section that requires approval of the Adex exam, which Dr. Morrow quoted, which is Business and Professions Code section 163255, we believe is self implementing. There are a couple provisions of our regulations that will need to be amended, mainly the application section, but we don't think that that is a barrier to implementing the exam at this time.
Okay. Staff would ask, because I believe the motion from Dr. Morrow only included the patient-centered curriculum integrated format, and that was specific to that. So are we not accepting the traditional format? I just want to be sure that that's staff's understanding. Or are we accepting the Adex examination in its entirety?
And that was going to my question, and that was the motion stated patient-centered curriculum integrated format only, and not just the Adex format. So I need some clarification, because if that's the case, then we're limiting to only that format. I do not believe that Adex examination results will specify which format the candidates took. So, so I think we need to clarify that, whether or not it's really the exam period, or are you talking about the format?
Okay.
And also, I have a question. If we are accepting it today, what does that mean to the candidates? The candidates who are taking it after today will be able to apply, or do we have a date? I know that the briefs and all that will probably take some time to set up. And you mentioned March 2020, so that, but I still want to know what it means for the candidates, because students are starting to sign up and also taking exam. They need to know, which one they should choose, and and also the date and the time. So that would be very helpful for the candidates to know.
So staff would also request that the board motion indicate that any candidate taking the test from today's date moving forward would qualify for licensure in California, and then they wouldn't be able to apply until the BRE system was functional. That would be part of the motion. At this point, it's an estimate, but we're looking at a potential March release date depending on testing. But so it would be contingent upon the board's acceptance of the exam candidates taking the test from today moving forward, and we could accept applications beginning when BRE has the functionality.
Okay.
Along with the payment.
Yes.
And assuming that the Adex exam is going to incorporate all of the components that are now in section 1630.
So just to be clear, Bahua, did you capture the exact wording of this motion?
I'm trying to capture everything, so so it would be estimated in March for the release, depending on the acceptance?
No, the motion that Dr. Morrow made.
So Sarah has it.
I believe Dr. Morrow's motion was to accept the patient-centered curriculum integrated format with the potential of having to do regulations moving forward for the implementation.
That's correct. My motion was centered around the board may determine the testing format. That's in Business and Profession Code section 1632, 2E. Board may determine the testing format as related to patients. So that's not talking about the content of the examination. It is addressing the patient provision for the examination. So that's the curriculum integrated format. So I'm exercising, my motion is exercising the option that the board may determine the testing format which is acceptable. That's the curriculum integrated format. And that was my motion.
So this is not the same recommendation that the staff has brought forward, just so board members know.
Just for clarification, Michael, then my understanding is if we limit the format, then we would need to promulgate regulations before implementation in Breeze?
No.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think we would. I think it would be based on the action by the board. I don't think, said a different way, I don't think we could refuse to accept it at this point based on the statute and the board action.
So just for clarification, we could accept the results of the curriculum integrated format of the Adex examination prior to revising the regulations to make that happen. Is that correct?
I believe we could, yes.
Okay. That was my understanding too.
Okay, if we could, let's just take like a 5-minute break here.
Oh, we're good. Sorry.
No,
We're good.
okay.
Staff's concern, though, at this point would be that we could potentially have an underground regulation if we were to only accept one format of the examination, since the statute is clear that it's the ADEX examination and that we had the authority to choose the format. So that's the only concern staff has at this point.
So this is where we disagree with legal at this point, but we'll bring Michael along. So the motion on the floor is, like I said, different from what the staff has recommended, in that Dr. Morrow and Ms. Burton's motion essentially says to accept the ADEX exam in a specific format, not in its entirety.
Okay, I am going to withdraw my second. Is there a second? Okay. So moved by Morrow, second by Mackenzie. Any further questions?
I got it. Thanks.
Just to be clear, this vote could take us down the path of needing to promulgate regulations, if I understand correctly. So again, that's the key difference with the with the staff recommendation.
Correct. Staff believes that if we go down this motion route, we would need to promulgate the regulations and wait for those to become implemented before Breeze would be able to implement any of the provisions. As opposed to, if the exam was accepted in its entirety, we would not need to promulgate regulations at this point, and we could begin the Breeze implementation. It's a difference of approximately 2 years.
Okay. Is everybody clear on that?
I'm really confused now, because I think when we first addressed this a year ago, it was the one exam. And now we're accepting 2 exams, basically, the traditional and the patient-centered, right? That's what my understanding is.
It's the same exam. It is the same exam.
The format's a little different.
The format is different.
So essentially, it's 2 exams.
And let me just add that I'd like the opportunity to discuss with staff. I didn't analyze this in terms of this scenario. We analyzed the necessity to promulgate regulations based on acceptance of both formats. So
You want that now, or you want it later? You want time now or later?
I think that's up to the chair. We can certainly sit back and discuss that, but I'm not aware of what those issues would be.
What happens if we hold this open to Okay. Yes.
So I think I was going to actually sort of echo both of those. So, like my recollection of when we discussed it, we were always focused on, Buffalo or the patient-centered, whatever we want to call it, and that generally was the exam or the format of the exam that the board, at least in my recollection, seemed to be most comfortable with, which is why I feel comfortable seconding the motion. That being said, I was going to put it out to the board, since there is sort of a difference between staff opinion and legal at this point. It does make me wonder whether the best thing to do is give them till the next meeting, come back and really know, at least on the regulation side, whether that makes sense. Whether we just want a little more time, but.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
After, do you want to hear what the regular board members have to say?
Is this new material? Can we take a 5-minute break? Okay. Can we take a 5-minute break? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Mhm.
We can come back to order. This is how I would like to proceed. I'd like to ask Adex to come up to the table, the Adex representatives to come up to the table. I'd also like to ask Dr. Heidi Linser to come up to the table. And before we move further on the motion, given the confusion, I kind of want to give you an opportunity if there is something that you want to say first. It's number one. And then number two, I want to turn this question around, and I want to know from members who are expressing some clarity. I want to understand further if there is concern, if you are expressing the need for clarity, or if there is concern. And if there is concern, if you would please tell us so that people just kind of don't get further confused here. And I'm going to leave it at that. So if we could start first with Dr. Pappas and Dr. Champagne.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. Let me start with one, I think, clear statement. There is only one examination. We do not have two examinations at Adex. There is only one examination. We test in 57 of the 69 dental schools in the United States. It is by far the most widely administered exam. Every one of those dental schools has the PCCIF format, which is the menu of options that you all have in your packet. So the school gets to determine the policies and treatment principles for that patient so that it's done in an ethical manner. That is all of our dental schools. The traditional format is a format exclusively for dentists, licensed dentists, who cannot separate it. All it means is that all the sections for them are offered at one time. It's offered outside of the traditional format thing, so that's a summer, basically, process. And it's because they already have they're patients of record of these dentists, and no one's ever raised a challenge to should a licensed dentist be able to provide treatment to their own patient. So there would be no supervising entity for that, and their follow-up would be, if required, with the dentist. The exam doesn't change. It's just that it would make no sense for a practicing dentist to have to break up the 5 skill sets into 5 separate visits over a period of time. And as you could appreciate, that would be a logistical nightmare if we had to do that to get facilities for that number of administrations. And we want to segregate practicing dentists from dental students, because when we give an exam in the dental school, the faculty do the follow-up care. The faculty, you heard earlier that there's, for example, advanced review of radiographs in the REB exam. In the Adex exam, it's the treatment itself is approved by the supervising faculty. They've already authorized it in a treatment plan by the dental school for them to proceed. So that process is actually a formal treatment planning process in the dental school. That's what we've tried to implement as feedback from dental schools and others in trying to do the most ethical exam we possibly can. So at all 57 dental schools we test in, they're offered it is the PCCIF format, the CIF format, whatever name you want to give to it. It used to be called the Buffalo model because we did it at Buffalo first. It wasn't because that was the appropriate name. It's that school was willing to go through the work to do this. But it's at every school. We don't offer a traditional format. We only offer that to people who are already dentists. Then these ethical issues and concerns about what happens for patients in the dental school should appropriately disappear, because they're no longer patients of the dental school. They are patients of that dentist taking the exam at that particular time. We don't have 2 different exams, so the exams are uniform. They're identical. There are no scoring, no content, no criteria changes, no process differences. Literally, they're all the same. The difference is that for every dental student taking the exam, because they're taking it in an institution, and it was really inspired by California. It was Steve Casagrande that came to the Adex meeting in 2006. That's how long ago this happened, to try to implement a similar process to what you have. I would respectfully ask that you don't require regulations. First of all, with the process timeline, you may want changes because you'd be a part of Adex at that point. There is a district within Adex in governance that is exclusive to California. California was a founder of Adex. Ariane Turley was the first secretary-treasurer of Adex from when she was on the California board. You may want to change it by the time the regulations get promulgated. It would no longer apply to the exam that you might want to change, and you might want to make an improvement. But what I want to clear up is any confusion that there's 2 different processes, 2 different exams. It's just that the PCCIF format, giving schools their appropriate authority on how patients are treated in the school, doesn't apply to a licensed dentist who isn't a student and the patient's not a patient of that dental school. So I can tell you, dental schools don't want to do this. They have already told us where we give it, we do not want to be involved in the patient care of non-patients of record. That's the big issue. They can't go that step. So if you promulgated that regulation, or you required that, you would eliminate any currently licensed dentists under 5 years of experience from taking the Adex exam for licensure in California, even though it was the identical exam. Every dental school we give, I would emphasize, every dental school, we've championed this. We want this to happen. Every single dental school is offered the PCCIF format and chooses from those menu what they want to implement that works within their school. And I will say right now that not every school does everything the same way because their curriculum isn't even identical school to school. There are institutional variances in education and dentistry in the United States, and some things they feel work better in their institution with their treatment philosophies. Doesn't change the exam, same content, scoring, criteria, nothing ever changes there. But we want dental schools to be comfortable with the format that how their patients of record are treated within that school. The whole focus of Adex driving this process was to make sure that patients were not harvested off the street and brought in for care and abandoned. That's why it is not logistically easy what we have to do. Some schools we go to 6 different times because they do one procedure at a time because that's the patient of record for that school. Some schools don't want to do it that way. They want to change the format. We work within that, but it's always within the ethical format of the dental school. There's only one exam. I can't emphasize it enough. The PCCIF format is the format in every dental school in the United States. The whole discussion this morning is really only relevant to already licensed dentists. So the difference in the exam is only for a dentist who already has a license, who now wants to take the exam. They could have been a PGY1 dentist, and they want to take the exam. They could have been a California portfolio dentist that wants to go to someplace else, the state that doesn't accept it, and they have to take the Adex exam to go there. We can't offer the PCCIF because they're no longer dental students, and their patients are no longer patients of the dental school. So that's the restriction. It's not that we have 2 formats. It's that a licensed dentist cannot participate in a PCCIF format because they're not dental students. It's just that simple. The institution's not going to take responsibility for something if they're not a patient of record. Does that clear up what might have been a confusion that there's because what I was hearing is, well, we offer 2 different. We really don't. It's just for dentists who are already licensed. They cannot take a PCCIF because they're not dental students.
I just want to add that OPS reviewed the procedures for the administration of the exam and the procedures for rating the examination, and we found them to be valid and legally defensible.
My experience goes back to probably 10, 12 years ago, along with Dr. Casagrande, as you mentioned. And the dental board at that time, from a standpoint of ethics, of patient utilization for licensing examinations, we basically drew a line in the sand and said, ethics we're teaching our students ethics in school, and then when it comes to a licensing examination, we're telling our students, disregard those ethics because you have to pass an examination that says, this patient that you're treating, that you're responsible for, you're the dentist and you have a treatment plan for this patient at the school clinic. And this would be an ideal restoration for you to use for your licensing exam. So let's don't do that now. Let's wait for 6 months until the licensing exam comes around. And then you can utilize this patient for your benefit. Where's the ethics? So that's when this board launched the process that ended up in Assembly Bill 1524 that put into law in California the implementation of the portfolio examination. Now, I want to state I agree with Dr. Champlain. there is one Adex examination. The only difference in those examinations is the way in which the candidates obtain the patients for the clinical portion of the examination. A typodont, a plastic tooth. I don't have an ethics involvement with a plastic tooth or a typodont. I do have an ethics when it comes to a patient. So the only difference in the examination is not the content, it is the process by which the candidate obtains the patient for the patient portion of the exam. I cringe when I see students that are graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, educational debt, and they are faced with the necessity of buying a patient so that they can take an examination. That just kills me. And up to this point in time, there has not been a testing organization that dealt with those ethical problems until Adex came along with its curriculum integrated format, where they come into the schools at various times and announced times so that the students can utilize their own patients in their treatment family at the appropriate time that that treatment is planned, and it eliminates the ethical dilemmas that we are making our students face when we have spent 3.5 to 4 years teaching them ethics, and then we say, now throw the ethics away to benefit yourself. So this board previously has taken a stand that said we need to do something about the ethics involved in patient-based clinical examinations. And we took the stand to go with the portfolio exam. I hate to see us back away from that ethical position and say that we will accept the results of a licensing examination that threw ethics out the window when it came to how they obtained the patients involved in that exam. Therefore, my motion included that we would accept the results of the patient-centered curriculum integrated format of the Adex exam only.
And Dr. Morrow, we don't disagree, and that's why at every dental school, the dental student's ability to present a patient is dependent upon that dental school's protocols in the exam. It's not ours. So that's what I'm saying. At 100% of our dental schools, every one of them, we only have a PCCIF format. Our traditional format is for non-dental students who the dental school will not get involved, and that's their own patient of record. These are licensed dentists, those who are taking the traditional format. The traditional format is not offered to dental students. We only have the curriculum integrated format in dental.
Well, my assumption, your assumption is that the dentist who is taking, the dentist already, who is taking the examination, not a student in their final year, but the dentist, is taking that examination in a state in which they are already licensed. Otherwise, they would not be able to manage the after examination care for the patient if they didn't have a license already in that state. And you don't know for sure how much that individual has paid for a patient to come and sit for that examination when they already have a license someplace, not necessarily in the state that they are taking the exam. So I'm still saying there's a line in the sand that says that you have crossed when you treat a patient in an unethical situation to benefit yourself.
I understand what you're saying. I just, I don't know that we have an authority over a practicing dentist on what they do. I mean, I don't know the solution for that, because that solution would eliminate any licensed dentist from taking an exam, going anywhere unless they took it in their own state, I guess, if it were offered in their own state. I mean, it would restrict the movement of licensed dentists. We couldn't give examinations.
I accept that you, as Adex, doesn't have any control over that, but we have the dental board does, because it states in Business and Profession Code 1632 that the board may determine the testing format as related to patients.
Respectfully, Dr. Morrow, you would be eliminating any of the regional testing agencies, not just those giving the Adex exam, it seems, because they offer the same, that same type of
This is addressing the Adex exam only. We would accept the results of the Adex exam. The board has the option for the Adex exam only to accept all formats or one format relating to the patient, not to the content of the exam, but to the way the patient is obtained by the candidate.
Michael Knotes again, and chiming back in on the prior question and statement about whether or not we would need regulations to implement the Adex exam. Having heard the description of the exam from the testimony from Adex, I'd like to ask my esteemed colleague from OPES whether or not the exam was tested as one exam, or if it was tested separately in a patient-centered and traditional format.
The exam was reviewed as one exam because the examination itself is the same examination. We did not look at different ways to get the patients used for the examination. We did not do an on-site review of the examination. We looked at the materials, the procedures, and the documentation that Adex provided us on how they administer and score the examination, which is one examination.
So let me, Section 1632 provides the option of, in subdivision C2 for the Adex exam. And certainly Dr. Morrow is correct that in subdivision E, for purposes of any of the exams, the board may determine the testing format as related to patients. Section 1632.55, which was enacted later and required OPES to conduct the review of the examination, laid out pretty specific requirements for that exam to be implemented in California, which is to certify that in accordance with Business and Professions Code Section 139, that the examination meets the standards of exams in that section. To the extent that it was only, and that the Adex exam is one exam that was reviewed in that manner, if, and I can't speak to this conclusively, but if altering the exam or providing for specifics and regulating the manner in which the examination is provided in terms of the testing format related to patients, if that would alter the exam or regulate the manner in which the exam is conducted, that may require an adoption of regulations, where Section 1632.55 is self-implementing. If we are going to implement Adex and then specify the manner in which Adex must be taken, that could require a regulation, and I'd like to look at that more specifically, if that's the will of the board to implement it in that fashion.
You have to wait now.
Okay.
Okay, so I just have a few comments, and more like a reminder, to the board, and that is, Adex exam is being administered by various testing agencies. So I know CDCA has been, behind this and started this conversation, but really when we accept the ADEC exam, we are really accepting the results from all testing agencies that are currently using the ADEX exam. So what that means is testing agencies besides CDCA, such as CETA and, is that SOTA? That are using your exam? No?
Just CETA and CDCA.
Just CETA? Okay. So that means that we're also accepting CETA exam results as well. Okay, so that's just point of clarification so that our board members remember that. Number two, since the ADEX exam reports to the board the results, it doesn't categorize which format the candidates took the exam, as I said earlier. So really, ADEX will send the results to the board saying that candidate A passed. And that's all that you will report, like which portions the candidate passed. You don't put on the result whether or not the candidate took the patient-centered CIF or the traditional.
No, you get a complete transcript, so all of the information is provided. Every attempt, every take,
Right.
every date, and you will. It's clear whether it's a CIF format or not. First of all, if it's a dental student, it's CIF, and if it's the traditional formats. Are all summer exams, and they're clear because all the dates of all these sections are the same time, and that's easy to report in a transcript. That's a.
But when we look at the exam results, we can assume which format the candidates took, but you don't actually have a check-off, like a checkbox where it says no.
And that
CIF.
I don't. I don't know. It's.
Okay.
Being involved also with CDCA and development of the reporting protocol, even if it wasn't there, that's an elementary thing to change. That's
and
easy.
because of the fact that if we accept the exam, it will only go forward. So let's say a dentist who's licensed in another state that doesn't meet the requirements for credentials, for licensure by credentials in California, that dentist will take the traditional format because that dentist is no longer in school. By not accepting the result for that particular candidate who took a valid exam, are we discriminating against those candidates? And number two, okay, and another, so basically OPS is saying that the exam is valid. In my opinion, that we should accept all format, because otherwise we'll be really not treating the new dentists who have to take that exam in order to come to California fairly, because now all of a sudden he took or she took the same exam. It's just that you're not allowed to come to California because you didn't take the PCCIF. Okay, so I'm just bringing these things up because those are the things that I think as the board we need to really think about it, and have the whole picture of what, the topic we're discussing.
Okay, before you go forward, Bruce, I'm having the benefit of looking around, and what I'm seeing as I look around is more confusion instead of less. And I think a part of it is wherever the question is in there, it's not coming out so that people understand what it is you need to make a decision. And I want to hear from you, but I also want to, I don't know that I need a substitute motion, but what I would like is some clarity. What is it that you need? And then I'm going to suggest that we hold this over and not try to take a vote on it today. But you both have done a lot of talking first, and there's a question in there somewhere, but when I look around, I don't see that people understand what the question is or what it is you need.
I'd just like to jump in and tag on to what Dr. Lay, so your comment about the board would be approving the Adex exam and thereby accepting whatever regional agency would administer that. Are you saying you have a problem with that?
No,
Okay.
I'm not saying that. No, I just want the board to know, because I'm not sure if all the board members are aware of that.
But I think that it's also important that the board members understand. You brought that up, but you don't see a problem with that. Essentially, Adex has said all along, they don't administer the exam. Other regional testing agencies administer the exam, but they keep track of the exam, if you will. It's their exam that's administered by somebody else. So I don't want you to add another question to this. Does it muddy the water by having 5 other regional examination boards, if you will, giving the exam? I don't think that's an issue at this point. But I agree with Fran. If this gets tabled, we need to know why you're tabling it, and you need to direct us as to what additional information. We have the players here now, and we need to understand where you're going with that. And I'm just going to make one other comment as a devil's advocate, and I apologize, Dr. Morrow, for this. But in the event, it appears that you're okay with the testing of students in the schools, but where you're having the problem is with the already licensed people who would be taking the traditional exam. Now, you recognize that those people can go to REB and take the exam to get licensed in California. And we are not requiring REB to do the same thing that you are talking about requiring of Adex. And my question is, which legal will have to interpret, is have we left ourselves open for a problem with that? Recognizing the board wants to take a stand, wants to promote this idea of a PCCIF format, but that people licensed in another state can go take the REB, which isn't administered in that format. So that's just another little piece there. Right. So
my concern isn't about the exam. All exams I'm okay with, but from a LCP perspective, I see a problem where, and I didn't know that an existing dentist can get a license, go through Adex, bring their own patient in, and present that to the board. So from LCP perspective, we don't have that the license by credential. That circumvents license by credential, right? 2, if, let's just say, they're in trouble with their state, they know it's coming down the pipe, or they're on probation, or they know something's coming. They take an exam, apply to California. We can't vet that. We can't thoroughly look at that part of the license by credential versus a new application. I think that's a problem.
I just want to clarify what your comment is. So if somebody's disciplined in another state and applies to California...
Or he knows he's in trouble, so he says, I better get a license in another state. So he takes an Adex and he brings the patient and he passes everything. and sends applications to, that doesn't have like a license practitioner credential, the 5 years, 5,000 hour
Right.
thing that we have already implemented. My concern is if you know you're in trouble, you said, you know what, I gotta leave town. And they prepare all that, they take an exam, and all of a sudden they have this credential saying, oh, did you pass it? Yes. Did you pass? Well, it could be Rep 2.
Well, that's my point
That's
too.
right.
It could
That's
be
true.
rep.
So that was a concern of mine from a licensing perspective, since I've been working with that a little bit. And that's concerning. So if it was just a patient-centered, I don't have that in the back of my mind, because the school, it's being done in a school, it's proctored, it's validated with the consent of the school and the dean. I'm okay with that. But if we have somebody coming outside and taking an exam on their own, we have no really fallback other than to do more investigation prior to allowing that to happen. And that's my sticking point. Testing agency, if they're qualified, they're qualified. But if we get into that predicament, we have to do an end around and say, okay, we have to have a way of validifying or make sure that the doctor coming into our state is qualified in all aspects.
Well, just a couple of observations, and Karen and some others have helped me understand that we can't have a dual standard, really, in terms of what kind of licensing exam we accept. Pardon me, but I think we need to be clear that the PCCIF is offered to the schools. The format in which the schools choose to implement it is up to them. Our experience with Portfolio has been that the schools have been slow to accept that model because they find it problematic to deliver. It disrupts their clinic schedule. I don't think we'll find that any different with PCCIF. So, if the goal is to go to a true CIF format, we may not achieve that goal. Now, going back to when the board conditionally accepted Adex's desire to come and give their exam, we did set a condition that it be the Buffalo model. What we've seen, though, is over the last 7 or 8 years, the landscape has changed. That condition was set at a time we thought maybe Portfolio would have acceptance and the schools would move toward that. We're kind of in a difficult position now, in that maybe we asked for a promise that the schools are not willing to keep, and we can't really dictate to them how they run their school. So, the fact is, we have this issue. I don't think we can pick and choose unless we want to go through the regulatory process. I think even then, there's a question of whether we're putting up a barrier to entry into the workforce. And given all that's going on and the broader picture, I have some concerns about that, although I think we are acting in our regulatory authority in the area of examinations. It's fairly clear we have pretty strong authority in that area, but I wouldn't discount the bigger picture either.
Just a comment, the situation that you're concerned about, you currently have. I mean, that's how practicing dentists get licensure in California now. They take the board, they take rep. So Adex does not change that landscape. That landscape is the same. So if you accepted the Adex exam, and that would just be another examination they would have to complete to be able to get a license, but it doesn't alter your statutory authority to review their disciplinary record and all of the other issues, but it doesn't change what you have now. You currently have that, where a licensed dentist anywhere can take the REB exam and gain licensure if they meet your other requirements here. We're not asking you to alter that at all.
To me, the question seems to be our resolve and commitment to giving the most ethical exam that we possibly can. When we went to the testing agencies with this examination process, they said, well, okay, we'll try it, but we can't do this. We can't go to schools 5 or 6 times. We can't populate an exam 48 hours. How are we going to get testing teams together in that period of time? We've done it, and they've done it. We have a commitment to giving the most ethical exam that we possibly can, and that's not going to change. We have follow-up forms that the dentist, when we do the traditional, they have to provide how that patient is going to be cared for after the exam. So if it's a patient of record of theirs, it's cared for. That patient is cared for by them in their practice setting. If it's a patient of record of someone else, that patient is cared for in their setting. So we're committed to giving the most ethical exam, and we're not going to change that. As you said, this goes back, or as Dr. Champagne said, this goes back to 2006. This is 2019. We've been working on this for 13 years, and it's working, and it's evolving, and we hate to see that limited. I hope we're rewarded by that commitment, not limited by that commitment.
Yes, it can be quite confusing, especially if I'm not a dentist myself, so I was just trying to understand. But I do hear what Stephen mentioned with regarding the ethical portion where you're a dentist and having a test with a live patient and then trying to get that. My question is basically, is that not what's included in their portion? Is that something that you want to add to it? And is that part of the process that might take a lot longer? Is that what is happening with that? Just wanted to clarify, please.
The ethical situation, in my opinion and my understanding, that brought us to the point of, brought this board to the point of developing the portfolio examination process is virtually eliminated in the patient-centered curriculum integrated format relating to the patients only, not to the exam content. It eliminates that ethical dilemma that our students and other individuals taking the examination, it's eliminated. So with that purpose and with that understanding, basically my intent in my motion was to give this board the opportunity to make the choice, which is in statute. This board may determine the testing format as related to patients. Now, my motion was giving this board the opportunity to make that choice. Now, if we choose to make that choice, which we have the statutory right to do, and if that choice is to accept only the curriculum integrated format, then we've made that choice. If we decide to select both formats, then we've made that choice. I'm simply putting on the table the opportunity for us to make that choice, which is in statute that we can do. It says may, it does not say we must. Okay?
But to further clarify for Ms. Medina, so correct me, Dr. Morrow, if I'm wrong, you're saying the examination administered in schools is ethical, but there's some question about that the exam administered to people who are licensed already licensed, because essentially there may be an ethical issue with the patient that they're treating.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you understand that, Ms. Medina? So the PCIF, the patient-centered exam, is being administered in schools. In Dr. Morrow's view, that's ethical. but those who are licensed in another state who choose to take the Adex exam and thereby bringing their own patient to the exam, he views that as coming away from the message that the dental board wants to send.
And is that currently what's motioned now?
Yes.
Okay. And then is that the one that you're mentioning that might take a longer process that was mentioned earlier?
Yes.
That if we do pass it, then it that's what I wanted to find out too.
Yes.
And I just want to add to that. If I understand what you're saying is that anybody who is already licensed but wants to take the exam, if they haven't taken something that looks like portfolio, then it's not ethical.
My understanding is that an individual also has the avenue or the portal for licensure in California through the credentialing process, irregardless of what examination they took, as long as they have a valid license with a clean record and they meet the other requirements of time in practice, which currently our statute and regulations require 5 years. That varies from state to state as to the length of time that is required in practice for qualification through credentialing license between states. So we have that option already, no matter what the examination was. If the applicant has a license in another state and has a clean record and has practiced for 5 years with 5,000 hours, then they qualify for license in California. We haven't closed that door, but we have not had Adex up to this point as being one of our examinations that we accept. We are now accepting Adex, and we have the option of identifying which format we will accept, and I'm simply putting on the table that option for us to discuss and to vote on.
So answering the question about regulatory authority, if Adex is one, and I'm understanding it now to be one exam, and I believe that we can, I believe that the board can, if it wishes, adopt this motion, but if we exercise that discretion under 1632E to determine the patient format, that will be making specific this portion of the statute and the portion of section 1632.55 that provides the conditions for Adex to be accepted. If we are going to then, as a board, regulate the manner in which patients must be used for the exam, I think that there's a strong likelihood. I haven't had time other than in between our discussions today to analyze that and consider that, but I think there's a strong likelihood that we would need to promulgate regulations to describe how that would take, because in that situation we are using that discretion in 1632E to prescribe for the Adex exam how patients would be selected.
Yeah, to answer to Dr. Morrow's statement on licensure by credentials, I think we all understand the licensure by credentials. But those that do not meet the criteria for credentials because they haven't practiced long enough, but they are licensed in another state, at this time they do have the option of taking REB in order to apply for a California license. And now if we accepted Adex, they can also take Adex. But if the motion is to only approve the patient-centered CIF format, then those that take the Adex will not be allowed to apply for California license, because basically we are saying that we're not accepting that format. from the Adex exam. So I do think that we need to have a very strong reason for not accepting that, because right now they can take REB, and we're not requiring REB to provide that. So why would we require Adex to do that? And basically to eliminate those candidates who take the traditional format.
I also just wanted to comment that, Dr. Morrow, I understand where you're coming from, and the board, I'm sure probably every board member agrees with you in that, on principle, we would like to see this ethical way of testing throughout the country. But I think the board can accomplish that in a different way rather than focusing on Adex. I think that the board can accomplish educating the rest of the states in our portfolio model and how ethical it is. I think that we can take this show on the road, if you will, working it from a different direction in terms of what the California board believes in, and that's an ethical way of testing, like Adex, like the Adex exam is doing. So I'm not sure that I'm convinced that going down this road requiring Adex to do this would be defensible, and we haven't looked at that. So I'm not going to put Michael on the spot. But if we table this, which I'm not suggesting we do, because I don't know, we need to know where your confusion is or where clarity needs to be made, or we need to know what you need in order to make this decision. And so as I've been listening to the conversation, as I view my job is to try as a layperson to cut away a lot of things that have been said and narrow it down to, yes, the board has always wanted to say we like the portfolio model, we believe in the patient-centered examination, but I think that the board needs to be looking at other ways to convey that message.
I understand.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out one issue. As I said, we test over 60% of the graduates in the United States. The traditional candidate patient population is less than 1% of our exams. This is a tiny, tiny number of exams. And what I'm more afraid of is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So all of of our candidates taking the exam across the country who have been waiting, they keep asking when is California coming, and they're being punished for the 50 or so traditional candidates. I mean, if that was really your inclination to do that, is there a way that you could fashion a motion that it only applies to dental students and you don't have to have a regulation, because that regulation process then becomes unknown in real terms on how long that implementation is. But we're talking about a tiny, tiny number of candidates, but the effect is dramatic. And what it causes the candidates to do inadvertently is to do this unethically. So you don't recognize the PCCIF format in the school they're taking, going through that process of an ethical exam and saying, no, now we want you to use the process we deem to be unethical. Travel with your patient or find a patient, go to another site, pay for that process, and that will take, but we won't take the ethical exam format in your dental school. I'm really concerned we're going to throw out all the progress we've made for the 50 candidates who are practicing dentists who want to come to California. That's the unintended consequence of this. You've said you believe that this is the most, and it took a lot of hard work and a lot of expense and narrowing margins and everything else to do it, and a lot of work on the dental schools. It's not easy on the dental schools. But we're saying you won't take that ethical format, inspired by your portfolio format. We want you to take the less ethical pathway. That's what I'm afraid happens here, and we're punishing a group of people. It's not us. You're punishing the dental students around the country taking the exam. That's what I'm afraid of. And I think we're losing the focus on based on a few number of traditional candidates. This is a minuscule number in the scheme of things.
And just so board members know, even if the board decided to just say for dental students, that would require a regulation too, because we have the opportunity to implement based on statute, but anything you need to clarify would require a reg. Okay, Dr. Yu.
I understand Dr. Morrow's question and also his care for the public safety and also care for the patient and quality. But then this problem has been around for a long time. Even when I was a student, when you take examination, sometimes you have to pay to get a candidate. This has been around. Doesn't mean that this is right. And I don't think we have 100% solution to take care of this problem, but then we cannot demand two standard for REP and also for ADAC. I think this is very important that we got to understand, and so that we can move on. Thank you.
Anything else? Tom?
I agree with with James in that, and I certainly support Dr. Morrow's concerns about all things ethics and treating patients responsibly. But after listening to our Adex friends this morning, I am convinced that that the staff recommendation is the right way to go, and I'd like to support that. And I appreciate your being with us and clarifying that message. It's helped me understand the issue. So thank you.
Okay. One last question.
It's not a question, and so as I'm understanding more of how this has historically been and the practice that it's been for both REV and ADEX, with regarding patients who are putting themselves on the line and exposing themselves as well, and I'm concerned of when you do practices that we've been doing for so long and not really take into consideration the patients themselves, just because one does it and the other one we should follow suit. I really do think that we should take into consideration what our job is here to do, is to protect patients, period, and those that are also going through the examination piece should also be someone that we need to protect. So I agree now that I'm understanding a little bit more of how it's something that I've heard from other members saying, well, it's not right, but we've had this for so long and it's so hard to change. But I think we can try to look at, if we change one area, we can look at changing the other area eventually. So that's just in my point. We can't just use that as an excuse that it's too hard and not looking at a solution moving forward.
Okay. There are no other comments. I'm going to call for a question.
Okay, the motion on the floor by Dr. Morrow and seconded by Ms. Mackenzie is to essentially accept the Adex exam in the PCCIF format and move forward with promulgating regulations in order to do so.
The other subsets were all components of the exam, except only from today's date moving forward, and accepting applications when Breeze is implemented. Is that correct? Okay. Burton?
No.
Burton, no. Chan? No. Chappelle Ingram? Abstain. Chappelle Ingram? Lie? Yes. Lie, yes. Larren? Larren, no. Lay? No. Lay, no. Mackenzie? Abstain, Mackenzie. Medina.
Yes.
Medina, yes. Morrow.
Yes.
Morrow, yes. Loggy. Loggy, no. Pacheco. Pacheco, no. Stuart. Stuart, no. Witcher. Witcher, no. You. You, no. Motion does not pass.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the board's report? And
I'll move the staff recommendation.
okay. Okay. So it's moved by Morrow and seconded by you?
No, Witcher.
Witcher and seconded by you?
Call for the vote. Burton.
Yes.
Burton, aye. Chan, aye. Chappelle Ingram. Chappelle Ingram, yes. Lai. Lai, no. Larrin. Larrin, yes. Lay. Lay, yes. Mackenzie. Mackenzie, yes. Medina.
No.
Medina, no. Morrow. Morrow, no. Loggy. Loggy, yes. Pacheco. Pacheco, yes. Stuart. Stuart, yes. Witcher.
Yes.
Witcher, yes. You. You, yes. Motion passes.
Okay. I want to thank you all for this conversation, and thank you for your clarification. Okay, the next item is item 17A. It is the review of dental licensure and permit statistics.
Good morning, everyone. Jessica Only with the Dental Board Licensing and Examinations Unit. What we have for you in the agenda packet are the statistics for the dental licensing unit for dental license and permits. Can everyone hear me okay? Currently, we have 34,698 active licensees throughout California. We also have a number here of inactive, retired, disabled, also renewal in process. So these would be licenses that will be either active or current. We have delinquent, and then a total number of canceled licenses since licensing was required. Before moving forward, does anyone have questions about the different license statuses? Okay. On the next page, page 2, we have the total licenses that were issued by pathway, and that's broken down for the last 3 years, and then a total to date. And that was since each of those individual pathways were implemented. And those pathways include REB, licensure by residency, licensure by credential, and included in licensure by credential is the pathway for either a clinical contract or a faculty contract. What this includes is applicants who at the time of their application did not meet the 5,000 hour requirement or 5-year requirement, but they had a license in another state, and this gives them the opportunity to work in either a clinic in an underserved area or as faculty at a dental school for 2 years. Once they meet that 2-year commitment, they are given an active unrestricted license. And also portfolio, excuse me. The next table is the license permits. These are permits for things like additional offices, sedation and anesthesia, elective cosmetic surgery, mobile dental clinic, oral maxillofacial surgery. Some of these permits are dependent on having a dental license. Others are independent permits that do not require a license, such as referral service, the extramural facility registration, those are tied to dental schools in California. The last table on page 2 and followed on page 3 is a breakdown of active licensees by county. It also includes the current population in that county and the breakdown of the ratio of dentists to population. Any questions before we move forward? Okay. Page 4 of your agenda item includes monthly statistics on the applications for the different pathways as of October 1st of 2019. That would include the REB, residency, credential, and portfolio. The credential pathway is not broken down by those that have the 5,000 hours versus people applying with a pending contract. That's just lumped into one area. It includes the applications received in the first area. The second area is applications total that have been approved. So we received 1,059 applications. Of those to date, 999 have been approved. As of today, for this year, 1,004 licenses have been issued. And that number is different from the number of approved because not everyone will apply for their license right away. These could be carryover from the previous year. Canceled applications could include applications that were submitted in error or opened in error, could have been a duplicate application. And then our last table is the withdrawn applications. This could be someone who just decided that they did not want to continue with the application. The very last table on page 5 is denied applications, and to date there has only been one application denied. Pages 7 through 9 will include charts of the applications received, approved, licenses issued, just in a chart format. And if anyone has any questions, that concludes the agenda item. Yes.
Is there a special permit for Botox? Or is that just under?
That would be under the elective facial
Elective.
cosmetic surgery permit.
So we don't have another, we don't have a permit just for Botox?
No, no.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't know the order here, so you guys decide. Okay.
Just a quick comment on Botox. It does fall under the 1638 permit. There's category 1 and category 2 for that. What some applicants do is they apply for a limited permit that includes Botox and fillers, and they can do that. But they do have to be board eligible or board certified oral and maxillofacial surgeon and have met various other requirements. So even though it could be just a permit for doing Botox, the applicant category is restricted.
And how many permits do we have with that?
29 or 26 to 29.
Let's see, we have 29 current permits, 4 delinquent permits.
Okay, yeah, because word on the street in San Francisco, there are people doing Botox. That's why I bring it up. I know that statistics, I want to verify that, but I hear things.
Through the chair. Yeah, board staff is aware this is a very hot topic. You can use Botox in conjunction with a dental treatment plan. You just have to be sure to document it, and that would include TMD for those specific indications.
Okay. Any public comment? All right, thank you.
Are we moving on to the next item? Okay, number 17B, this is the statistics for the general anesthesia conscious sedation permit. You'll see in the page 1 of 4 are the statistics for the general anesthesia permits. September and October numbers are still tentative because we're still gathering results. We might have issues with some, so those are not final, but will be final at the next meeting. Page 2 of that report is the same. These are the statistics for the conscious sedation evaluations. Page 3 would be for the medical general anesthesia evaluations. And then page 4 is a graph as well as the count of current evaluators per region. I want to add that Dr. Witcher and I, as well as some of our current evaluators, and this was brought up at an earlier board meeting, we did put on a evaluator calibration course and trying to recruit new evaluators. And at our last meeting, we did report some new evaluators at that time. And I just wanted to also include that since that last meeting in August, we have received 3 new Northern General Anesthesia evaluators, 1 new Northern GA evaluator who has also requested to do conscious sedation as well, and 1 new Southern conscious sedation evaluator. So our numbers are steadily increasing. I hope that I can continue to work with Dr. Witcher to put on more calibration courses and continue to recruit evaluators because we have a lot of evaluators who are retiring. And it's, we need a new pool. We always need to keep up to date, not only to recruit new evaluators, but also to keep everyone up to date on the changes. And if anyone has any questions?
Yes.
I have my spreadsheet that I do periodically. We have 10 years worth of data for this program from starting in 2009 when Jessica took the program over. The trends, are pretty much what we've seen in the past. The number of total evaluations is down slightly, but still well within what we need to stay current. In other words, we're at 185 for general anesthesia, 290, let's see, the number for conscious sedation is also going up, which is good. We need to be at least 165 for general anesthesia, 80 for conscious sedation, 11 for medical general anesthesia permit holders. The number of evaluators did do a slight uptick. I would like to think that was a result of our outreach. But still, we're, back in 2014, we had 350. We're down to 292. So that is a concern. Conscious sedation evaluators that were a very nettlesome problem have gone up to 168, and this is north and south. So that's actually come along pretty well. The area of concern remains, though, with the medical general anesthesia permit holders. Their numbers have gone up just over the last year from 78 to 94, yet we're only doing 2 evaluations. And the reason for that is these folks are incredibly hard to schedule. Plus, you have to have a double degree evaluator go out. We can't, it's a very limited number of our evaluators are qualified to do the medical general anesthesia. So, that remains kind of a problematic area, and I don't know what to do about it, but just try to keep getting the word out there. We get a handful of MGAs that come to our calibration courses, but not many. I know it's an area where they kind of feel like they're already qualified as a physician anesthesiologist. Why should they have to go through this? But, I think that's just some education we need to do. So anyway, I'd really like to thank Jessica for all the work she's done on this and for coming to the calibration workshops and helping with those. And I know Karen came to one, even though it was marred by some audio-visual issues. It seems to have generated some evaluators, so it can't have been a total failure.
It has.
And, whoever comes and takes my replacement, if they are a permit holder, I'll pass along my spreadsheet so they can have the benefit of all that data.
Thank you, Dr. Witcher.
Thank you. Anything else? Any public comment? Okay, the next item is 17C, and it's discussion and possible action regarding the application for the dental school in Qingdao University School of Stomatology in China. Now, before we go to that, I just wanted to make everybody aware that we're just going to press through until the end. And so, same thing applies if anybody needs to take a bio break, just make sure that we have a quorum. So this is the report.
I'm going to take this.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you can see by the memo that we initially received the application for dental board approval of the Qingdao University School of Stomatology in China in February. When I initially went through the package, I saw that there was information that was submitted in Chinese, and the requirement is that the application needs to be submitted in English. So I notified the school at that time. They resubmitted their package, which again starts the timeline in June, and asked that we disregard the previous information that was sent. President Burton appointed the subcommittee of Ms. Pacheco and Dr. Morrow to review the documents, which were probably 500 pages easily. They independently reviewed the documents, and the three of us actually came together on September 11th in Fresno. Thank you for hosting us. By the way, Joanne is a fabulous hostess. She brings in all kinds of goodies and snacks and makes sure we have things in the car to take back so that we didn't get hungry. So I think we're going to deem you board member hospitality chair. Okay, awesome. We won't be disappointed. So we spent the day going through the application, and what's in your packet here are a number of deficiencies that were found by the subcommittee. So on September 24th, I notified the school of these additional deficiencies that would have to essentially be rectified before a recommendation by the subcommittee could move forward to the board that their application was deemed complete. So there's no action at this time because their application has not yet been deemed complete. And at this point, I'll leave it open to Dr. Morrow and to Ms. Pacheco if there's any additional comments you would like to make.
Well, I would just like to say that the submission, the application was very well organized. It was submitted in 12 different bound volumes, each one volume per standard. There are regulations have 12 standards for educational standards for dental schools, and the organization of the application was probably the best that I've seen in the applications that we've received. However, as you can see from the report that's in your meeting materials, it was determined that there were a number of deficiencies as far as supporting compliance with those 12 standards, which is what is necessary for the applying school to do, is to not only give a narrative description as to how they are in compliance with that standard, and then some documentation to support that they are in fact in compliance. So some of the narratives were insufficient. They did not describe adequately how the school determined, or what in the school's opinion they were doing to be in compliance, and then the documentation to support that in fact they are in compliance. So you'll see in the report that is in red is the identifies the deficiency. I think at this point in time we have not received any information relating to this most recent review and request. This is the second application that the university has submitted, so we're still waiting to see when and how they respond to this request. So.
Well, I can thank Dr. Morrow. He was reviewer extraordinaire. I learned a lot through the process, and I can tell you that we were pretty congruent on the missing documentation.
It's such volumes of material. We couldn't thank you enough for taking a look at that for us. The next item, if there is no public comment, is item 18A. It's the tentative calendar for the year 2020.
Now, I'm prepared to present on this, but I know that you like to do that, so at your discretion.
Okay. You see the calendar before you. The most important date is the 6th of January when the legislature reconvenes. And by that point, a number of people will have already started the process. If there's legislation that they want to have introduced during the year. It's the typical deadlines, deadlines for the budget and for the hearing process. And I guess the most important thing is that new statutes take effect on the first of the year. So if there are no questions about that, the next item is 18B, the year-end summary.
Gabe Nevin again, the Legislative and Regulatory Analyst for the Board. So the Board has been tracking several bills throughout the 2019 legislative session, affecting the Dental Board and Healing Arts Boards generally. A number of those have already been presented, and I'm just going to be presenting on the bills that were passed and chaptered at this time. So there are more extensive summaries that follow in the attachment. But starting with AB 5, this bill codifies the Dynamex decision, and the law will now assume that a person providing services for remuneration is an employee unless the employer demonstrates that the laborer is free from the direction and control of the hiring entity and performance of the work. The laborer performs work that is outside the usual course of the hiring entity's work, and the laborer performs work that is customarily an independent trade. And I should note that dentists have been specifically exempted from being independent contractors or employees under Dynamex, under AB 5, excuse me. AB 149, existing law classifies certain controlled substances into designated schedules and requires prescription forms for controlled substances prescriptions to be obtained from security printers approved by the department as specified, and also requires those prescription forms be printed with specific features, including a unique serialized number. This bill delays the requirement for those prescription forms to include a uniquely serialized number until a date determined by the department that is no later than January 1, 2020. The bill requires that the serialized numbers be utilized as a barcode that may be scanned by dispensers, and makes any prescription written on a prescription form that was otherwise valid prior to January 1, 2019, but that does not include the uniquely serialized number, or any prescription written on a form approved by the Department of Justice as of January 1, 2019, a valid prescription that may be filled until January 1, 2021. And the bill also authorizes DOJ to extend this time period for an additional 6 months.
And before you go on to the next one, Ross, the discussion that we were having about cures yesterday, this fixes a part of some of your concerns. Not the e-script, but this fixes the part about I think that one of the things that you brought up was right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So next up is AB 528. This bill changed the requirements for reporting the dispensation of a controlled substance from 7 working days to 1 working days to report to cures. It also adds Schedule 5 drugs to the cures reporting requirements. It permits a licensed physician and surgeon who does not hold a DEA registration to apply to access cures information. And it requires prescribers to review patients' cures information initially and every 6 months if the controlled substance remains a part of the treatment. That's a change from 4 months previously. Next up is AB 954. This authorizes a health insurer or healthcare services plan that sells a plan covering dental services to grant a third party access to a provider network contract, subject to requirements that these provisions are clearly identified in the contract and that the provider is allowed to opt out. The next one is 1519.
We did that yesterday.
We did a pretty substantial presentation on that, unless anyone would like another one. I'll move on to the last bill. That's 1622. So existing law requires an informed consent before administering anesthesia, and for a minor requires giving the guardian a statement encouraging them to consult with their dentist or pediatrician. This will add a family physician to that list of dentist, pediatrician, and family physician.
Any questions?
So AB 1519 will essentially postpone the most recent the China dental school. Does that, if this goes into effect, then we don't really have to pursue that?
I was wondering if somebody was going to ask about that. So, unless the board deems the application complete by midnight on December 31st, the application is no longer under consideration.
Thank you.
And before we move on with this, just a little history for board members, and this is a shout out to Sarah Wallace. When I first came on the board, this sort of end of the year report did not exist. And it was through Sarah that we started this process, and now we have this as a part of our end of the session every year. So just a little history there of how far we've come. Thank you. The next item is 18C.
Still me. So this is a discussion and possible action regarding legislative proposals for the 2020 Healing Arts Omnibus Bill. Staff anticipates that the Senate Business and Professions and Economic Development Committee will be introducing 2 omnibus bills for 2020. One bill will be for designated for healthcare and bureau legislation, and the other will be for non-healthcare board and bureau legislation. The committee is expected to introduce the bills for introduction early 2020. Omnibus bills should include non-controversial proposals for cleanup. The board just went through our sunset review process in 2019, and staff was involved in the drafting of Assembly Bill 1519. So therefore, all important legislative issues staff have identified have been recently enacted. And as a result, staff did not have any newly identified issues for the omnibus bill. Board staff will continue to solicit potential omnibus bill proposals to present to the board for next year.
Thank you.
If we can go back to item 18B, there was action required or requested by staff. I don't know that it's that critical, but it's consider and possibly adopt the attached legislative summary for year in 2019 legislative session and direct staff to post a report on the board's website. Madam
I'm going to move that.
Okay.
And second by Lay.
Second by Lay. Did you want to ask for public comment before we?
Any public comment? We asked for public comment before.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Okay. Burton?
Yes.
Burton, aye. Chan, aye. Chappelle, Ingram? Yes. Chappelle, Ingram, yes. Lai? Yes. Lai, yes. Larren, absent. Lay? Yes. Lay, yes. Mackenzie? Yes. Mackenzie, yes. Medina?
Abstain.
Abstain. Morrow? Yes. Morrow, yes. Loggy? Yes. Loggy, yes. Pacheco? Pacheco, yes. Stuart? Yes. Stuart, yes. Witcher? Yes. Witcher, yes. You? Yes. You, yes. Motion passes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, Gabriel, I'll take this one. Item 18D is this discussion of possible legislative proposals. So every year, since I've been here, we use this as an opportunity to have members provide information on anything that they think that they'd like the board to pursue as a legislative proposal. I've been fairly adamant about this, and that is just don't talk about it. You've got to give us the background information so that we can begin the process to see whether it's something that is conceivable, something possible to go forward. So if people have something that they'd like to mention today and then get us some background information, I'm happy to hear from you. Seeing nothing.
All talked out.
We're now moving to 19A, the update on the regulatory packages.
Gabriel Nevin again. So I'm just going to go through the attached summary and give the board an update on where the regulatory packages are, and the understanding that everybody's already familiar with them. So with regard to basic life support equivalency standards, the staff has drafted the initial rulemaking documents. Legal counsel has reviewed and approved those documents, and we are now working with the budget analyst to get the fiscal impact documents approved. When we're done with that, we're going to be submitting the rulemaking to the department for review by legal. For citation and fine, we've again drafted the initial rulemaking documents and council has approved. They've been submitted to DCA as of April 2nd. The department approved the package on October 16 and submitted it to agency. And that review is ongoing. When that review is completed, we will be submitting the document to the Office of Administrative Law to begin the formal rulemaking process. Continuing education requirements. We're still in the process of drafting the initial rulemaking documents for approval by board council, and when we finish, we will move that forward through the rulemaking process. The dental assisting comprehensive rulemaking, which we all received a presentation on earlier, is still being drafted. It has now been moved forward to the board for further consideration. The determination of radiographs and placement of interim therapeutic restorations. Rulemaking has been drafted. We're still working with board legal counsel to get those approved to send into the legal department. The diversion committee membership, we've drafted those initial rulemaking documents. Council has approved of them, and we submitted them on October 16 to legal for review prior to submitting them to OAL. The elective facial cosmetic surgery permit application rulemaking has been drafted. We've drafted the initial rulemaking documents and the application forms. Council has reviewed and approved them, and we're now working with the budget analyst to get those budget documents approved before we submit them to the department. The law and ethics exam scoring rulemaking has been drafted, council has approved, and we submitted the binders for formal review by the department on October 17. The mobile dental clinic, mobile dental unit, and portable dental unit registration requirements rulemaking is still in the drafting process, and we'll be working with council to get that finished. Minimum standards for infection control. The initial rulemaking documents have been drafted, but we're still working with council to get them approved. The substantial relationship criteria rulemaking under AB 2138 has been submitted to DCA on September 13, and we will be waiting for their review. And that's it.
I'd like to shout out to Mr. Nevin and Mr. Knotes for moving this along. I mean, they have done a lot of work in a short period of time. I know that the board's been very patient with these regulatory packages, and it's certainly not an easy task. So on behalf of the board, I'm going to say thank you very much for all the work you've put in so far. And we'll be submitting these to the new regulatory unit at DCA to see how quickly they can get these through.
I just want to ditto that. I can remember years of people saying, where is this? Where is this? Well, we're working on it. Well, we don't have enough staff time to do this. This is significant. This is really a great job. Thank you.
Good to hear.
Any questions?
Just
Any
a
public
comment.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just really like to thank Gabe. He jumped in on the comprehensive dental assisting rulemaking package that's pretty gargantuan, and really went through it and did a superb job. And, I think he's working on an honorary dental degree.
Thank you, Dr. Witcher.
Number 20.
Number 20, always pulling
Number
up the rear
20,
here.
It's the Ross
Pulling up the
Slideshow.
rear. Good afternoon. LCP committee met in closed session yesterday to consider new licenses to replace canceled ones. We considered 2 in the DDS category and 13 in the RDA category. It was very efficient. We got through, got to dinner on time, and I have a great staff, and this committee is awesome. So with that, Ms. Loggy is going to give the report. Thanks.
So after a thorough review, the following DDS shall be issued a new license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes the California Dentistry Law and Ethics exam. CCTN. The following RDA shall be issued a new license with the condition that the applicant successfully passes a combined RDA, General Law and Ethics written examination. SA, LC, SC, JD, WD, BE, AJ, LM, CM. And this concludes the LCP report. We're happy to take any questions and our comments, and we ask for a motion to accept the report.
Question?
Let's get a second first. Moved by Chappelle Ingram.
I'll second Witcher.
That was not complete. Okay, so we're gonna review the RDA and RDAs for their initials again. RDA SLY, LLC, SC, JPD, WLD, BE, AG, LM, CM, LM, RSR, JS, and KS all need to take the California RDA General Law and Ethics written exam in order to receive their new licenses.
Okay. Okay. And then I will second, and then you had a question.
Yes. So I take it there were no RDA applicants who were not required to take the licensing exam?
That is correct.
Do you have any criteria by which people might be accepted from the exam?
The criteria that we followed were because as of 2010, there was a change in what we required for an RDA. And so we took that, if they did take the exam prior to 2010 and their license expired prior to that, that was one requirement that was first in our mind. Secondly, if they're actively practicing in the dental field, or if they've gone to another career and have come back to that. A lot of changes have happened since 2010, and right now we're looking at 2020. So if they've been out of the practice of dentistry for a considerable amount of time, we did add that and consider that. Most importantly, because of changes in scope as far as EFs and sedation assistants, oral surgery assistants, it was kind of important they would have at least the basic knowledge and the basic tools in order to be able to practice, with a dentist and know all the new materials. And I think it's very important that just because you've been practicing or been moving around, there's so many things that are new, digital, scanning. I think it's important that if we're going to put our support and label that they're an RDA, they should be at least minimally qualified in our eye. And most of my staff did consider that. We considered each one, not in a very quick fashion as people think that I do things. Everybody was vetted, and everybody had a conversation about each individual. So, does that answer your question?
Well, I guess there were 2 or 3 applicants who were whose license was canceled around 2013, 2014, who were still actively working in the field, and their CE was up to date. In other words, they would have taken California law.
Correct.
So presumably, if they got anything out of that, they would understand the current scope of practice.
Yes.
Now, I could see if somebody had been out of the workforce for a while, like, I don't know, 5 or more years, and if they had been expired for longer, that would raise some concerns. But it just seems to have everybody who's after 2010 required to take the licensing exam. It's not an inexpensive thing. And if you've got somebody who's actively working in the workplace, a lot of these cases were hardship cases. They really kind of had to go back to work, and that was why they were trying to ask for a replacement license. So, I know you had a discussion about it, but, I just think that there might have been a few of these who could have been excused from the exam. Now, I'll support your recommendation because I want to respect your deliberations, but I would just ask you to consider that going forward. Thank you.
Okay, let me have, I think Meredith wants to chime in, and Rosalind wants to chime in with me.
Yeah, I think I wanted to specifically address, so I double-checked the 2013 and 2014 cancellations you're referring to. Neither of them had been working as dental assistants since that time, and some of them possibly even before, because it was canceled, because that is a factor. So typically, if it's after the 2010, then we're focusing on the experience, and at the very least, if they have not been working for 5 years as in that area, then we didn't think that was sufficient to be able to waive the exam. So that was on those two. I don't think I missed any, but.
Well, I trust that you looked at it. I just wanted to make sure.
Is this your final act before getting off board? Thanks.
Yeah, I still think of myself as an LCP committee member.
I do. I feel that.
Moved and seconded. Was there someone else that you wanted to comment, or was it just, oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Any public comment? I'm going to call for the question.
Burton.
Yes.
Burton, aye. Chan, aye. Chappelle, Ingram. Yes. Chappelle, Ingram, aye. Lai, yes. Larrin. Larren, yes. Lay, yes. Mackenzie. Yes. Mackenzie, yes. Medina. Yes. Medina, yes. Morrow. Yes. Morrow, yes. Loggy. Yes. Loggy, yes. Pacheco. Yes. Pacheco, yes. Stuart. Yes. Stuart, yes. Witcher. Yes. Witcher, yes. You. Yes. You, yes. Unanimous. Passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, our last item is election of 2020 Dental Board of California officers.
I have the pleasure of presiding over this election. So at this time, I'm going to take nominations from the floor for the position of secretary.
I'd like to nominate Joanne Pacheco.
Ms. Pacheco, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Are there any additional nominations from the floor? Nominations will be closed, and if the secretary could call the roll.
Do we need to do that if there's a single candidate?
We have to take a vote by Barry King on all of them.
Okay. Okay.
Do we have to have it moved and something?
Yeah. No, we just do the roll call.
Just do the roll call, okay. Let's see, let's make sure. Burton.
Yes.
Burton, aye. Chan, aye. Chappelle, Ingram.
Yes.
Absolute doesn't fit on here. Chappelle, Ingram, yes. Lai, yes. Larrin, yes. Lay, yes. Mackenzie, yes. Medina, yes. Morrow, yes. Loggy, yes. Pacheco, yes. Stuart, yes. Witcher, yes. You, yes. Motion passes.
All right, congratulations, Ms. Pacheco. You are the board secretary. Next, we'll be taking nominations from the floor for vice president. Dr. Chan, will you accept the nomination for vice president?
Yes.
Okay. Call the roll.
Burton.
Yes.
Cough, cough.
Yes.
Burton, yes. Chan, yes. Chappelle, Ingram. Chappelle, Ingram, yes. Lai, yes. Larrin, yes. Lay, Yes. Mackenzie. Mackenzie, yes. Medina. Medina, yes. Morrow. Morrow, yes. Loggy. Loggy, yes. Pacheco. Pacheco, yes. Stuart. Stuart, yes. Witcher. Witcher, yes. You. You, yes. Motion passes.
Congratulations, Dr. Chan. You'll be the board's vice president. Okay, finally, we'll be taking nominations from the floor for the position of president.
I second the nomination.
Dr. Stuart, do you accept the nomination? Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll for the last time?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Burton.
Yes.
Burton, aye. Chan, aye. Chappelle, Ingram. Chappelle, Ingram, yes. Lai. Larren, Lai, yes. Larren. Larren, yes. Lay. Lay, yes. Mackenzie. Mackenzie, yes. Medina. Medina, yes. Morrow. Morrow, yes. Loggy. Loggy, yes. Pacheco. Pacheco, yes. Stuart. Stuart, yes. Witcher. Witcher, yes. You. You, yes. Motion passes.
Congratulations, Dr. Stewart. You will be the president. And that concludes the elections.
Are there any other items? You have to speak in the...
Are you asking for future item agenda for the agenda? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
No, this is, no, we're asking for public comment now. Seeing none. Okay.
Yes, I'd like to ask about, for future regard to the Senator Pam, remember at the Sunset Review hearing, he asked about the conflict of interest form for CE providers. To me, that's a very important topic. I thought we actually had it. When I was listening to the hearing, I realized, and we came back later and spoke about it, I realized we didn't have it, and I know we mentioned it before, but I think it's very important. It may not be an issue at larger meetings, CE meetings, but at smaller CE meetings, items and dental products are pushed heavily. So I would like, I don't know if that's taken care of here at the board meeting or if it's a committee issue, but I would like to go back and review that.
Okay. Got it? Anything else? Bruce, do you just have your card just wavering in the air, or did you have something? Okay, Dr. Yu.
I just want to praise Frank for the tremendous job she has done for the past years, for the census review, everything. I know it's not an easy job, but you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.
This is an interesting one.